My parents have been covering up the fact that my sister has feelings for my husband, and now he's been getting texts from her trying to steal him from me. I, 24F, have been married to my husband, 27M, for about 2 years. My sister Jane and her husband are high school sweethearts. My sister and I have always been close, and despite the small age gap we have, she's always acted like my second mother, so I never doubted her anything. My husband and I met at college, and he excelled in both academics, sports and looks, and was well known around campus because of that, so obviously, I had a crush on him. Jane also attended the same college, and because I was new she included me into her big circle of friends and my husband was a part of that. I never made a move because I respected Jane and her friends. I didn't want to cause any trouble or make things awkward. Eventually though, my husband and I became close friends and I grew to like him more. I also noticed that Jane rarely interacted with him, which was odd considering she was close to almost everyone in her circle, but I never said anything. I did end up telling her I liked him though. She told me not to get my hopes up because he wasn't interested in any relationship. I was crushed, but tried to see him as a friend. My husband ended up confessing to me on my 21st birthday that he had feelings and we began dating, which obviously resulted in marriage, and here we are now. During the entire time we were dating, my sister Jane started to distance herself from me. We did have a talk about it when my husband and I first started dating, and I told her I'd break up with him if she wasn't comfortable with it considering he's her friend, but she rejected the idea. She hugged me and said she was happy for me, so I took her words for it, but she still distanced herself though. My sister met a man named Jim, and he's a good man who works for his dad's construction company. He did everything for Jane, but due to our culture, women can't leave the family house until marriage, so Jane and I still lived with our parents then. So when Jim had saved up enough money to buy a house, he proposed to Jane and she said yes. Fast forward a year and my husband proposed to me. When I sat my family down and told them the news, my sister cried. I thought she was crying from happiness until my mom told me I should have taken my sister's feelings into consideration before telling them. It was odd. It seemed like no one was happy for me. My mom took Jane to her room, but my dad stayed. He told me that Jane was having a hard time with Jim. I believed them. Since then, Jane distanced herself more from me. When I tried speaking to her she'd reply curtly, and when I brought it up with my mom, she said that she's going through a hard time so I shouldn't make it worse, so I left her alone. That was until my husband confessed that my sister had been texting him consistently for the past few weeks. He showed me the texts. She'd ask if she could call or meet him. She'd also attempt to text him late at night. The last one was when she sent him photos of her in revealing dresses and asked him to choose the prettiest. That's when he decided to tell me about it. Before anyone says anything, no, my husband didn't lead her on and his texts were dry. He felt uncomfortable, but decided to put up with it because she was my sister. He also admitted that Jane had confessed feelings for him years ago but he had rejected her. It felt like everything was falling into place when he told me that. I was so hurt by her, and I immediately confronted her when I got home. I thought she'd at least be ashamed, but she said that I stole him from her. What's worse is that my mom sided with her. I've always had a feeling she was my mom's favorite, but she was my favorite too. It made sense that everyone loved Jane. I loved her too, but she betrayed me in the worst way possible. She even said she hated me and didn't want to see me again, so I packed my things and left. My dad told me that I shouldn't leave because it's not appropriate for an unmarried girl to leave her parents' house. My mom even called me horrible names for leaving to go to my husband's place. It took a long time for me to get over what they did. When I think about it, it still stings. My husband and I lived together before marriage. I also cut contact with my family, and my husband and I got married without inviting anyone from my side of the family aside from a few close relatives. A week ago my cousin told me Jane had her wedding. I guess she went ahead with it. Today though, my husband showed me a message he got on Instagram from her. He hadn't seen it because it was in the request section, but it dated back to a week ago. She confessed to him again and told him she'd make him happier than me if he gave her the chance to. He screenshotted it and blocked her and asked if it was okay to send it to her husband Jim, but I said no. I don't know why. Jim deserves better, but I just don't want to deal with her anymore. I feel so guilty to keep this away from Jim. However, I don't want this to blow up in my face, especially when my husband and I have been living so peacefully now. Update. In the back of my mind I thought regardless of what I told my husband, he'd probably still send Jim the screenshot of my sister texted him, and sure enough he did. He also screen recorded the message to prove that it came from her account, which I didn't know he did. I won't go into too much detail, but Jim didn't reply until last night. He called my husband and they had a long chat. Apparently, when Jim confronted my sister, she tried to blame my husband for coming on to her. They had a fight and she left to stay with our parents. I know a lot of you told me to send the screenshot to my parents, so that's what I did. I sent it to my dad and not my mom. I'm sorry, but I still can't find the strength to talk to her, and I don't think I ever will. My dad said he and mom will deal with it, and to not tell anyone what Jane did. I feel worse now for even thinking he'd side with me. For anyone wondering whether my husband sent Jim the old messages from Jane from years ago, he didn't. He bought a new phone right after we cut contact, so he doesn't have them anymore. I don't know if Jim will divorce my sister, But he told my husband not to contact him anymore, so I think we did our part already. Thankfully she hasn't come to my house, but I did take your advice about installing cameras just in case because I can never be too sure with her. My husband is my new family, so I'm not going to think about my parents or Jane anymore, she's a wreck.